From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Paul Mission Control Decant. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. For everyone who loves cryptids, good news. For everyone who hates cryptids, we got some bad news. We're back on the game. Longtime listeners, you will know we examined cryptids in depth. In fact, breaking news, we're returning to the low coast of the Atlantic in just a few days, partially to look into allegations of mysterious shenanigans around the coast and swamps. But we remember our previous episode here, right? Previously on Stuff They Don't Want You to Know.
Oh yeah, it was Cryptids of India Part 1, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, cool.
And in it, we discussed the intense biodiversity that India experiences and how cool that is and how there really might be undiscovered stuff out there. And there are a ton of rumors and myths and purported creatures already there.
It always reminds me of that. Was it a Star Trek film, I believe, The Undiscovered Country? Just the idea of like a wilderness so vast that there could be, in the colloquial use of the word country, undiscovered parts of this unseen, jungle for these kinds of things to thrive.
And to that point about biodiversity, we're also going to bring some science to bear, some very exciting science that we can't wait to share with you that actually, in a weird way, supports some conspiracy realist arguments. We'd also, before we begin, like to take a second and thank Truth is Fiction YT on both Reddit and YouTube, because Truth is Fiction YT, your amazing cryptid map of India inspired a lot of our conversations last evening and this evening. Here are the facts. As said earlier, India is legit amazing. At the beginning, I was looking back on our India episodes. At the beginning of every episode we have ever done on this region, we have a meditation on the history of this modern country, the stunning biodiversity, the profoundly complex and sometimes problematic sociocultural dynamics of the many civilizations that have existed there over thousands of years. We're back at it. And I don't know about you guys, but when we first began looking into this, the idea of cryptids in India seemed kind of counterintuitive. It's one of, if not the most populous country on the planet right now. So how could people there somehow not have discovered every other type of life form in their borders?
Yeah, it just goes back to that whole point about how vast the wilderness is in that part of the world. We talked about our friend Mangesh, whose grandfather, I believe, was a high-ranking official in the country's forestry commission or division or department or what have you, whatever they call it over there. And he pointed out to us just how insanely forested this part of the world really truly is. And there's lots of places where people just don't go.
Well, and that's the thing about humans. There could be a whole bunch of us in a designated area, but we tend to clump up a whole bunch, don't we?
It's a gregarious species. Yeah, it likes itself, right?
Well,
fire makes friends. Fires love other fires.
Borderline insists upon itself.
I think mostly we get bored real easily, so we want things to do, and generally other people mean things to do, I guess.
We need company. We get lonely, really. We're not designed to be alone for, long periods of time and vast stretches of area to wander alone. It doesn't really suit our temperaments. Some people love it, but the vast majority, I would say, not really suited for it.
It calls to mind the idea of thanatology, right? The study of death and the
Infinity Stones.
Sure.
Of death and Infinity Stones.
And Thanos' logic was very stupid, but it was a great series of films. I want to shout out our pal Josh Clark in particular for recommending a book to me several years ago, Denial of Death, the argument being that all things humans do is primarily to distract themselves from the reality that they will die. This has taken a different direction.
That's a bummer way of looking at just the old pastime, you know.
We've mentioned the book in previous episodes. Yeah, I'll save you some time. That's the gist of it. Mm-hmm. They take a long time to get to it, but that's the gist.
I'm sure there's some good minutia in there, but when you really do think about it, the idea of a pastime, passing the time, it really is just kind of counting down the seconds until the ultimate, end of time for us as individuals.
And one thing we didn't mention in our previous explorations of cryptids in general, cryptids in India specifically, indeed the idea of mortality, is a crazy, fascinating fact. Species are going extinct at a higher rate than they are being discovered, which means that experts right now will tell you in a best case scenario, human civilization knows only around 20% of the total unique species on planet Earth, which is a baffling, it's a wackadoo number. It's cartoonish. Only 20%, 1/5 of all life the humans know.
Yeah, that's that includes the oceans, right?
That includes the oceans, which of course skews the metric quite a great deal, because the humans do know more about the surface of the moon than they do know about the ocean.
Yeah, and we can even, for the most part, get to the most remote parts of the jungle. We might just not want to hang out there indefinitely, but as far as the ocean's concerned, we know what happens when people try to venture too deep. And now it's the opposite of flying too close to the sun. They kind of implode if
delving too deep.
There you go. Yeah, well, we know anyway. Did we hear that there was news about another kind of crackpot billionaire trying to make a sub to go deep down to the Titanic wreckage again?
Everybody gets one, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there was a really funny meme where it was like, this person has the chance to do the funniest thing ever, which is implode again. I know it's a bummer. Memes can be real dark.
Well, hopefully it will aid somehow the greater scientific endeavor, right? The great conceit that the world is worth understanding and indeed understandable. Scientists, when they hear this stat of 20% of life being all we know, they take that personally. Speaking of memes, I heard that. I took that personally. This is where we go to Walter Jetz and Mario Mora. They're both out of Yale, and they created this fantastic, profoundly informative map/model that reverse engineers the idea, the assumption that humans only know 20% of Earth life. And they said, well, let's look at the other 80%. Let's figure out with the power of science where those unidentified creatures may live. And to make things possible, they took out maritime creatures entirely, and they took out invertebrate entirely. They just said, let's look at undiscovered terrestrial vertebrates. The end result of their project, which continues today, is something called the Map of Life, which sounds hyperbolic, but I'm going to be honest, I think they earned the title.
It looks cool. And, they're backing it up. These guys, both from Yale, as you said, notorious members of the secret society Map and Life. That's a joke. That's not true. But no, it looks incredible. And if you take a look at India specifically on this map, there's some pretty big regions here. It's not massive, but it's you tell me, what do you guys see? I see it towards the bottom near Sri Lanka. So I don't know what you call it, the foot of India.
Sure, the horn, the reverse horn.
There you go.
Yeah,
the dealy bop. Yeah, little toe. I'm sure Sri Lanka wants to be called, as an independent country, I'm sure Sri Lanka wants to be called the toe of India.
It's interesting the way this thing's coded. When you look at it zoomed out, it's like very pixelated. It's kind of an interesting choice of design for an infographic, but it does give you some really, granular detail.
It makes it look like it's loading, I think.
I thought it was for the longest time, guys. I'm not going to lie. And then I zoomed in and realized that the text in the background was perfectly clear, and that as you zoom in, the blocks just get bigger and bigger. And it really shows you how massive this area is that we're talking about in the toe or the horn of India.
But can we talk about the discovery potential that it outlines there?
Please do.
Like specifically, it's got a pull down
Right.
for amphibia. So amphibians, birds, reptiles, and mammals. And if you click on like mammals that are undiscovered, so discovery potential to find a new species, in this large pink area, it's ranging from 0.16% to 0.19%. So very small percentage chance of finding a new one, but still it's higher than in most of the other regions.
So you're saying there's a chance.
The estimation there, to break down the percentage, right, there's that really cool color-coded overlay with the drop-down menu for mammalia, amphibia, aves, birds and reptilia. That percentage, to my understanding, is saying this is the percentage of the total 80%. This is where that is most likely to be found.
Yeah, it says portion of yet to be discovered species in this class predicted by our models to be found within this specific cell on the map. Okay, that makes a lot more sense to me. Sorry, I probably misspoke in that previous section. Call in and tell us how we got it wrong.
We're all learning this together, I think, for the most part, at least me and you. Ben seems to have a better grasp on it, but I was with you. I was with you all along the way. Thank you, Ben, for clarifying. But it is an oddly designed graphic, but I think the inherent in the design, it packs a lot of punch. It has a lot of interesting, like I said, granular detail.
Yeah, do check it out. It's mol.org. It's a fun thing to poke around and play with, right? Because it is a model. You can go through any part of the globe and look at what their model predicts for undiscovered terrestrial vertebrate. According to the Map of Life data, there are thousands of potentially undiscovered unique life forms in India, most of whom are likely to be reptiles or amphibians. And because we said vertebrae, things with a spine, let's remember, they're not really counting the insects. They're not really counting the maritime cryptids in the vast waterways and oceanic territory of India. This is amazing. And we saved it for part 2 because it is scientific proof, right? Or scientific, I would say, circumstantial evidence of cryptid existence.
Well, I think a listener just wrote into us, maybe it was on Instagram, I can't remember if it was to all of us, but asking us about the Fermi paradox, and I'm certain that we've covered that in the past. We absolutely had to, but it's this idea of the discrepancy between the lack of 100% conclusive evidence of extraterrestrials compared to the overall likelihood of such creatures existing. And it makes me wonder if there is such a concept for cryptids, like earthbound. I guess they're not really extraterrestrials, but they kind of are in the same ballpark, right?
Yeah, it's a little weird in this case, though, because when we're talking about cryptids, generally there are tales or sightings or, a description or...
Well, there's that for extraterrestrials too, though. I mean,
there are, yes, but in the models that we're talking about here, we're talking about undiscovered. I don't know. It's hard for me to square these two things because you were talking about undiscovered species of, let's say, amphibians, right? So these are amphibians that are likely very similar to other amphibians we've already categorized and named and all of that, but they're different enough to be a complete new species, right?
Right.
That's
a unique life form. There's also, here's the connective tissue. If you wrote to us on Instagram, sorry we didn't see that one, all of us, but the connective tissue here, and I think the point you're making, Noel, is that there is a race toward classification against the ticking time bomb of extinction. Fermi's paradox is closely related to, as we discussed linked the previous episodes, the chasms of space and time, incorporating what's called the dark forest theory. Shout out Three Body Problem. And then
still need to finish that.
It's worth it. And then, in my opinion, and then the terrestrial version of that would be that this planet is currently living through the sixth mass extinction in its history. So we talk about this in earlier cryptid episodes. We are more likely now than ever, thanks Fox News, to find unidentified creatures. And they are now more than ever likely to go extinct before we find them. So there is a bit of a paradox, and I do think there's a thematic relationship there.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, Ben. And also just to double up down on what Matt said, it's something that hadn't occurred to me because my brain was sort of reaching for the completely different species that are unrecognizably different from the ones we know. And Matt's point of the minute differences of what could be considered a quote-unquote cryptid just because it's something that we don't know about, but it might not look that impressively weird. But I think today we're talking about some that would be considered impressively weird. But there's
Tales of cryptids. One of our best examples from the previous episode was the tailed slow loris.
Yeah.
The loris is real. This one is slow, like another slow loris, which is proven to exist, but it has a tail, so it became a tall tale of a cryptid.
It's a bit of a womp as far as the cryptids. That would be, but it's not. But it's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
We just we have to keep an open mind because it doesn't discount the more out there ones either, right? So we
100%.
We just have to go into that with our eyes open.
Well, more 0.18%. That's just it.
And so we have to ask, armed with new technology, scholarship, and information, is it possible to begin parsing those legends and folktales through the lens of science? In our previous episode, we discussed some of the most popular, prominent, well-known, and plausible cryptids in all of India. Tonight, we are finally getting to the weirdest ones. Question, fellow conspiracy realists, play along at home. Will your faithful correspondents be able to solve any of these cryptozoological mysteries?
We'll find out after a quick word from our sponsors.
Here's where it gets crazy. Yes, I'm going to say it on record. We can't always say it in these episodes, but this evening we can, I am confident, solve at least one cryptozoological mystery. I mean, also tales of cryptids. Forgive me for that pun, guys, but hashtag no pun left behind. We know it is plausible to assume in India that given the vast biodiversity here and the continued growth of the population, if actual cryptids exist in this region in particular, they may well be discovered in our lifetimes. And I'm not talking about just, like a little frog that has a different series of bumps. I'm talking like hopefully a big one. I hope we find a big one.
The very least one with like an extra set of nostrils or something, right?
Yeah, like a half man, half monkey.
Oh, no. We teased this one in the last episode because I think I sort of jumped the gun a little bit, and it just occurred to me because there was this film that was out recently by Dev Patel called Monkey Man. That if I haven't seen it, but from everything I've read, it essentially his character capitalized on the myth of the Monkey Man of New Delhi in order to strike fear into the hearts of his opponents in the fighting pits. So that was actually, I think, my first exposure to this myth, and it's a really interesting one. It's got some Scooby-Doo vibes after a fashion.
Of course, they're Bigfoot-like creatures. Half man, half monkey. We're not so different, you and I, says the Sasquatch with an inexplicable British accent. Humans are humans. Anywhere you go, of course. It turns out pretty much every civilization on this planet has had some sort of hairy wild man mythology. And for two examples, we're going to get to Pakistan in a moment, but I like the vibe here. Let's go with the Monkey Man of New Delhi. It might be unfamiliar to, I put Westerns in the notes, but I meant Westerners. Accountability moment there. There was a straight up panic in the summer of 2000 that racked the city of Delhi. And this is a huge population. It's like 19 million people, very dense urban environment. But they were convinced there was a murderous cryptid in their midst.
Yeah, and it was during a series of pretty serious rolling blackouts, which, obviously affects climate control. It was very, very hot, very, very scary. People were not doing super well mental health-wise during this period of time. And, when people are pressed in this way, it can lead to paranoia. It can lead to, not to say people were hallucinating or anything, but it can lead to perhaps seeing things that aren't entirely there or being unsure what it is that you're seeing, especially in the dark of night.
Well, yeah, there's something about cities. No matter how far advanced they are, no matter how early they are in human civilization, when you've got a city center, right? Or if we're talking about, let's say, Aztec Mayan civilization, you may not refer to those as cities, but it is a city, right? A bunch of people gathered together that live very close together. Light is so important when you've got that type of density. And especially when you have a more modern city where people are so closely packed in at night. First of all, if there's no light, and then you're just hearing the sounds of so many other creatures that are most of them human near you, it can have a psychological effect. Add to that the heat, which we know in previous episodes has a tremendous psychological effect on human beings. When it's hot out, you want to get away from that generally. And if it's hot at night and you can't cool yourself down through the ways that humanity has learned to cool itself down
in the heat of the night.
Yeah. There we go. I mean,
the sexy, sexy heat of the night.
The tension that must have existed in that time in May 2000 in Delhi, I can't imagine what it must have been like, because it's not like it was, a blackout for a little time, a couple hours, right. Then the utility came out and everything was fine. We're talking especially about areas of Delhi that were poorer, right? That just didn't have as many wealthy people, because those folks had generators and stuff, and they were GTG or whatever.
Yes, good to go. Unpredictable rolling blackouts. So adding to the psychological horror, you don't have, for instance, the privilege, and it is a privilege, of knowing that the power will be in operation from, say, 1500 to 1800, right? You don't have that predictability. You just have to get the light while you can, right? Figure out the stuff that you can before the lights cut at some moment, and hope that scream in the distance is a fun scream and not a crime occurring.
More of a wee.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe an animal, Delhi, and sometimes depending on what tragedies befall folks, it can be difficult to discern the difference between the scream of an animal and the scream of a human, right?
Well, and we're talking about too, in any urban city center, especially in places that are maybe less expensive to rent and to live in, usually people are kind of living right on top of each other. And so there really is that kind of almost hive mind mentality there as you start to maybe experience vicariously through others that fear creeping in. You can create a panic because you are so close to others that might be themselves panicking.
And this is not to pick on Delhi in any way. We see this, we see the broad strokes of this occur in multiple urban environments throughout history. Check out, for instance, Jack the Ripper, Spring Hill Jack in the UK. I guess now I'm just picking on the British, but Delhi police started receiving these complaints that there was a savage, unidentified attacker harassing communities in what we could call the Delhi metro area. And the complaints started coming in on May 10th, 2000, right? In step with these blackouts and this miserable weather. Immediately after the police started to profile the attacker, the more they learned about it, the more confusing it became. And they identified, first off, you want description, you want MO. All the attacks took place at night, never during the day. There was never any surveillance footage, which also kind of makes sense because the power was out. There were never any still photos. So they had to rely on our favorite thing, eyewitness descriptions.
Yeah, and this isn't one person's description that says it was a guy who was also kind of a monkey. We're talking about around 350 individuals, or let's say individual sightings of this thing, this person, whatever it was. And the majority of those sightings did agree that this guy, whoever it is, was kind of monster-like. There was an ape-like quality to this person. I forget, it was like 1 meter to 1.8 meters, so like 3 feet to 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
And hairy, right? And and red eyes.
Hirsute, red eyes, like, if you've ever taken a picture of an animal where the light refracts the wrong way, like kind of glowing eyes. And then, of course, arms, the arm to leg ratio being longer than that of your average Homo sapien. And so I love that you're pointing this out, Matt. It was not just one person, calling into coast to coast or something. It was multiple people who said they were being attacked by this thing that was not quite a human. And allegedly,
well, at first, right? At first, at least. Well, we're here. Let's say we're still around May 10th. The first descriptions are really eerie because it's not like people are talking to each other about this yet. It's not like anybody knows about this. These are just the first reports that are coming in.
And they also included another allegation, an allegation of, dare I say, superhuman abilities. Because just like a Desi spring-heeled Jack, this monkey man, Hanuman, you might say, right? Whatever this thing is, it allegedly has this superhuman ability to leap away from the crime scenes. It's not running. It's jumping from the ground to the top of a building and then off to the rooftops, like that old Spider-Man game on PlayStation.
Yeah.
Or Assassin's Creed.
I'm glad you mentioned Hanuman because in my head I knew that there was some connection to like one of the pantheon of Hindu gods, and Hanuman is a Hindu god who's half monkey and half human, but is a good god. It's considered a protector, and is actually often, his image is placed at the entrance of Hindu homes, and is considered a grantor of boons and a warder of evil, ward offer of evil. So this is like a good dude, so oftentimes when we see this hysteria around a cryptid and reports of it, it often is tied to some cultural kind of boogeyman, right? And so this isn't that exactly, right? It's interesting. I don't know. I wonder what you guys make of that.
Well, Hanuman also had superpowers, like could jump really far across an entire giant raging river, or
but he
could fly.
He wouldn't jack
even.
you up, though. He'd
if you were a bad guy, he would jack you up.
If you violated the wrong
That's
social
fair.
Contract, he's after you.
But also accounts. This is a dude that's messing with good people. This is messing with innocents.
not accosting random people in their homes during a blackout.
No,
monkey
Hanuman.
kings, monkey gods are a very common thing in this part of the world, right? And there are tons of really good movies coming out of China about monkey kings. This does
but
exist
Hanuman,
in the
most of them
zeitgeist.
are based on Hanuman, right? I mean, I think
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's a very common thing, and these exist in the zeitgeist. These people would have seen these things, is what I'm saying.
Got it.
There's also a feedback loop that occurs. Local media covers this without pause. They want the clicks, right? And the descriptions, to your earlier point, Matt, they begin to become more fanciful. We start seeing the game of telephone. Now, all of a sudden, one of these attacks has Freddy Krueger-like claws, right? And then more of those descriptions later include, or subsequently include, Freddy Krueger-like claws. And then we see stuff saying, oh, is a guy wearing a leather jacket, donning a motorbike helmet. Classic Hanuman.
I'm gonna say it was that guy the whole time. I mean, not to, rain on the parade, but it does strike me. I know we're going to get into this crime of opportunity, of more of like the ability to roll people kind of in the dark and capitalize on their fears, and then maybe a copycat element to it as well, which I know you wrote about, Ben, and we're going to get to, but this is when I start to think about Scooby-Doo, where every time there's a ghost or a cryptid or a monster in Scooby-Doo, it's always just some jerk that's capitalizing on people's fears and suspicions of the existence of some kind of boogeyman, and then, it's every time.
But you know what the villains in Scooby-Doo always have? A motive.
That's true.
A reason to do it.
Yeah.
When you watch the AP newsreel that's included that you can find for these Monkey Man attacks in Delhi in 2000, there are people showing off scars and injuries, and it's usually like a small scrape on their back or their arm, or a tiny child that a mom is holding up that has their head wrapped. And it's like small. Again, I use the word accost because it's almost like somebody jumped in and popped you good in the arm or in the back, hit you in the back, and maybe punctured a little bit if they had a tiny claw or something.
And took off, right?
It's not an amputation. There aren't murders.
Well, yeah, there's not murders. There's not robberies often. There's not a motive, I guess, for why these attacks would occur, which is strange.
Very Joker-like, though. It's just like sowing chaos, just the idea of capitalizing on this bad situation and deciding to terrorize people, which is inherently, psychotic.
I would say it has a lot. It sort of it functions as a precedent to those really crappy TikTok pranks of sucker punching people.
Right.
But this was not documented. And these reports clearly indicated to law enforcement that something was rotten in this part of India, to paraphrase Shakespeare. So they were in a terrible position. They created a reporting hotline, and they offered the equivalent of about $1,000 for information that could lead to the capture of the now infamous Monkey Man. And that was about 50,000 rupees at the time in 2000. And now we have to pause and say a hotline for a cryptid run by the cops. This creates a panic feedback loop, especially amid the poor residents of the area, who we'll get some stats on them in a second. But, by and large, these folks could not afford their own backup generators. So instead, they were forced to tremble through those hot, dark nights, hoping the moon was full to shed some light, wondering whether this was the evening the Monkey Man would come for them. And this had real world consequences. There were mob beatings. This one poor van driver, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This mob decides that he is the Monkey Man. They surround his vehicle, they drag him out of his van, and they beat the snot out of him. He goes to the hospital, multiple bones are broken, and then one guy runs onto a roof because he's trying to escape what he feels is an attack by the Monkey Man. And then later, in a panic, he falls and he dies. He falls from the roof and dies. And then worst one that we found and this is all common reporting, there was a woman who was pregnant, and she thought she was under attack from this infamous Monkey Man. She tried to run. She fell down a flight of stairs. She died, and the child was lost as well. Again, real world consequences.
Should we shout out that, I don't know if you guys read the same one. It was the Historic Mysteries article on this. Just had a lot of good stuff in it. It's titled "Who Was the Monkey Man of Delhi?" It's really good, by Roisin Everard.
I'm going to hazard a guess. This isn't the one that we're going to solve today.
Well,
we have some interesting circumstances here, some context that needs to be provided, because after 2 weeks, the panic that swept Delhi subsided. Gone. essentially. And there was a great study in the Indian Journal of Medical Science in 2003, so a few years after this incident, and they dove into the social context of this. 94% of the reports of Monkey Man came from the poorest region of Delhi. And of those reports, 89% came from people with what we would consider an impoverished background. Or, I mean, it's India, so it's socioeconomic, so also lower caste. The caste system is its own bag of badgers.
Yeah, still very real.
Yeah, but then maybe this led the experts and law enforcement later to say maybe the media kind of fanned the flames here.
You think?
Maybe there were criminals who decided it was hunting season or was open season because they could just attribute whatever they do to the legend of the Monkey Man. And then also the heartbreaking part is maybe there were people who made up their own Monkey Man stories in an attempt to get access to medical care.
Oof.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, no, it's just heartbreaking. But yes.
It matches up with, again, just the footage that you can see where there are people showing off what appear to be two very strange bite marks and a huge scrape that looks like it's going to get infected. And let's say I can imagine that if you scraped your back really badly, you fell off a moped or something, you fell off a bike, whatever, you got scraped up, you can't access healthcare for whatever reason, but you come in with a report of this, or you make it look like you got attacked in a different way. I could totally see that being a plausible explanation.
To a point, though, right? Because it got so overwhelming, and the law enforcement and medical infrastructure just couldn't support the burden of the absolute deluge of calls reporting this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So much so that eventually, again, a few weeks in, law enforcement went back on their note about the hotline, and they said, look, if you are making fraudulent claims, or you are distributing misleading information, or you're reporting attacks without proof, then you are going to be in trouble. It's not going to be a fine. We will put you in jail. And we have to understand, in the context of this, if someone goes to jail in some of these family groups, then the entire family is massively screwed. So this is an existential threat to a bloodline. Don't fib about Monkey Man. And then, just like that, as a result, the Monkey Man disappeared. We mentioned previously the works of fiction that perhaps inspired this panic. We also mentioned the film, Dev Patel's film that came out in April of 2024, but we haven't even gotten, guys, we're almost 40 minutes in. We haven't even gotten to Pakistan and the Bar Manu, which I like to call, we have Bigfoot at home.
Oh, yeah. But before we get there, just two more quick points here. First one is we saw something similar with a hotline with a reward attached when we were making Atlanta Monster, where in the early 80s, the Atlanta Police Department and the FBI set up a tip line. So if you had any information on whoever this person was that was kidnapping children and killing them, call in, tell us, and you will get a reward if it leads to an arrest, right? And there were so many calls that basically the task force just was so inundated, they had to track down each one because each one might actually be real, which means all the time, the man hours that you pay this huge task force just got eaten up.
There's a balance there, though. It starts to be like it's more trouble than it's worth. It's the same with Zodiac. That was a thing too, right? That wasn't a reward, I don't believe, but there was a hotline, at least the newspaper, and there was, it's depicted in the film, just getting all these cranks calling in.
Well, yeah, they tried to set him up to actually call in the Zodiac's case, but in that case, it was just a huge resource drain. In this case, I can imagine how if, $1,000 may not sound like a lot to you listening, that is a huge amount of money for a lot of people. So the desire to do something in some way to get that reward, I can just imagine that would be a highly desirable thing.
And This is, again, only one example of Bigfoot-like or primate-esque cryptids in this region. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsors, and when we return, we'll learn why we say Pakistan said, "We have Bigfoot at home."
And we've returned with the Bar Manu of Pakistan. Pakistan, is that right, Ben? The Bar Manu?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have Bigfoot. Oh, that's a meme, right? Where it's sort of like a janky version of the real thing. Isn't that kind of the joke there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like there's one where it's like we have Pink Floyd at home, and it's like this dude playing a Casio keyboard and singing this weird version of Another Brick in the Wall. But yeah, the Bar Manu of Pakistan. The word itself comes from the Khawar language, and it roughly translates to forest man. So we go from monkey man to forest man, and boy, are we teasing all these forests that there could be, strange and unusual and undiscovered species lurking in around India. So here we are in the shadowy darkness of the forests.
Yeah, this creature is fascinating, just like the orang pendek and the orangutan, right, which is proven to exist. This creature is alleged to possess traits of humans and non-human apes. This one in particular, real rough customer, infamous for attempting to abduct women for the purposes of mating. However, unlike a lot of campfire tales, this one got some real scrutiny. We want to introduce you to a Spanish zoologist, Jordi Malgraner. For 3 years, he searched for this wild creature of Pakistan from 1987 to 1990. He then continued to search throughout the 90s up until he was murdered during this search in Afghanistan in 2002. And he was boots on the ground interviewing folks who felt they had seen this thing. The way they describe it is very strange because they said the creature was capable of processing animals. Like it wore animal skins, it wore hides. It apparently domesticated or tamed dogs and horses. Those are very human things to do. And there's so much more to the story, but the plausible verdict, I would argue, is this. The craziest plausible verdict is that a human or group of humans living off the grid in the wild may have become mistaken for unknown or non-human creatures due to their behavior.
You mentioned the orang pendek, but also comes to mind the orang minyak of Malaysia, which was the oily man or whatever, which also was accused of sexually assaulting women and purported to have vaguely animal, perhaps, ape-like qualities and covered in a sheen of either fur or like oily kind of substance. So a lot of this stuff, there is that even game of telephone that happens between large stretches of distance in the world.
I was reading in a forum of all things, which, right, it's somebody wrote on a forum somewhere at some point, but they were talking about the death we mentioned, right? This person who spent a lot of time looking for this creature was murdered. And according to this forum, well, I'll give you the moderator's name, Rescue Ranger. That's the person who made this post. Now, he said that this guy, Magriner, was killed by his servant boy on the orders of local militants, it says.
Warlords.
Yeah, interesting.
And then we know if it's Afghanistan, and shout out to any Afghan conspiracy realists listening to this, but we know there is an unclean conspiracy that is pretty ancient and continues today in that part of the world, which is systemized, normalized abuse of children. If you want to ruin your day, look up Bachi Bazi. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Duly noted. I don't, and I'll save it for a day I want to ruin.
Yeah,
but,
don't. We've talked about it on the show before. It's
just I must have blocked it out.
It's a good thing to block out.
Yeah, probably so.
But the idea of being, to you, Ranger Rick, if you're tuning in, the idea being that maybe this child was weaponized in that kind of system of abuse.
But yeah, who knows? It's just a strange story, and we want to find a Bigfoot somewhere. Please, somebody out there, find a Bigfoot.
If you got big feet, maybe you can count, be the change. We could also move on to something a little more positive, right? A bit more historical, nerdy, straight up unicorns. That's right. The last unicorn, all your favorite fairy tales. The Indus Valley unicorn is endlessly fascinating. It is described as though it is a real biological creature. Very long ago, we mentioned Pliny in an earlier episode. He writes about the unicorn in a way, I'm going to be honest with you folks, in a way that is just realistic enough to me to think maybe it was real. Because it's not pretty. It's not a pretty description. Do we want to do the quotation?
The fiercest animal is the unicorn, which in the rest of the body resembles a horse, but in the head a stag, in the feet an elephant, and in the tail a boar. It has a deep bellow and a single black horn 3 feet long projecting from the middle of the forehead. They say that it's impossible to capture this animal alive.
So it's a real clomper.
Yeah.
It's a real, that's our quadruped Bigfoot, apparently. It is not sexy. It's not that virgin, loving, graceful equine of myth and legend in the West.
It does not think friendship is magic. It does not. No, it's coming for you.
And it's instead, what strikes me here is it's like the Ivan Drago of unicorns. It's essentially an ox with a big murderous fighting horn, and it just sort of goes, instead of nay, nay, nay.
It'll do that Mortal Kombat finishing move where it just skewers you and then tilts its head up so your body slowly slumps down, sinks into the horns, and then just sort of shakes you off, and it says fatality on the screen. That's what this fellow would do.
Mm-hmm. There is additional historical context, though, because it's not just one guy, well, the most famous historian of the time. It's not just one person writing about this. This is, I was thinking of the best way to say this for everyone listening tonight. Imagine if Bigfoot was the national symbol of a country in the modern evening. Like pick a country and they say, what represents us, our national animal? Beat me here, Paul. Bigfoot. That's us. That's our country. That's what Indus civilization did with this unicorn. And the depictions of it are surprisingly consistent.
Yeah. What is it? The Mohenjo-Daro, the unicorn seal. Mm-hmm. This thing is really interesting looking. It doesn't have feet like an elephant, I wouldn't say. I don't even know about the boar tail, but it almost looks rhino-like in the face to me or something, or zebra-like. It's depicted with stripes almost in that big horn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's found throughout all these seals of the Harappan civilization as well, what we would call loosely the Indus Valley civilizations. And these seals, which are pretty common for their time, they date back to 3000 to 1500 BCE, and they heavily feature this unicorn. It's the most common motif in these Indus seals overall. And like you were saying, if you look at the photo link of the seal, you can find it pretty easily. Just go to harappa.com. That's HARAPPA.com. You can see the gallery, which depicts the thing. The one that we pulled for this has a penis.
Sorry, I was looking at a different one.
Okay. Well, the one I put in the notes there is interesting because it has what appears to be some sort of human-made, like feeding trough or chalice with decorations. So it's possible.
It has a snout, almost like the boar part. To your point, Matt, there are lots of different versions of it, but I'm looking at one that's engraved in either like a coin-like surface, it's etched into it. And it also appears to have kind of side boobs. It's like the way it's drawn.
And just to finish this one part, the idea here implies that there may have been domestication. that humans may have been making something to feed it.
And Ben, to your point, like, so, and Matt, maybe to some of the confusion that maybe folks that are looking at different versions of this might be experiencing, there are ones that look just like straight up like an ox, and there's ones that look straight up more like an elephant. But then there are the ones that are kind of the more proto version of the unicorn type thing we're talking about. So maybe we're seeing depictions of what would be the product of domestication, right?
I think so.
The thing we were saying off air is that there is a large enough window of time that it is possible something like this did exist and then went extinct, right? We know that different domesticated animals have gone extinct, or tamed animals.
Can we also point out, too, that some of these we're looking at a profile picture of it, which makes it look like it only has one horn. But if it was a front picture, you might be seeing two horns. I'm just saying there are other images of it where it definitely has two horns, but it's a different perspective. But a lot of these, we're looking at a side image where you might just be seeing the profile of the one horn because they're kind of lined up and they'd be blocking the view of the other horn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can't really fact check at this point in history, right?
Etching. Yeah, you really can't.
There are like 4 libraries, and the public's not allowed in them. So obviously there's no Wikipedia, shout out to Wiki. But for a cryptid to appear so commonly in state level artifacts for so long and so long ago, it is not unfair to ask, could this have been a real creature? And of course, if you have sighted a steroided up unicorn in your neck of the global woods, we would love to hear about it. Please don't try to fight it. Just take a picture. As always, be respectful of wildlife.
Ben, do you think you could PvP a unicorn?
Absolutely. Well, not that kind. No,
okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Not the roided up variety.
No, and you shouldn't. But one thing that I think, unfortunately, everybody listening has killed is a spider. So in our pal's cryptid map of India, one thing that stood out to several of us is the idea of bioluminescent spiders. And the weird thing is, India has a ton of bioluminescent life. It also has a ton of spiders, many of which scientists believe are, as of yet, not identified. So could it be possible that India has glow-in-the-dark spiders?
Yes. It's Avatar as heck over there.
Well, you know where else is Avatar is heck that we've also talked about and maybe even done episodes exclusively on. Australia has tons of bioluminescent stuff. There's the whole bioluminescent beach in Jarvis Bay where you see these things that wash up and they frickin' seriously glow in the dark. And there's also bioluminescent like stones and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it feels very similar or adjacent to me anyway.
And far more animals are bioluminescent than we might assume, fellow non-biologists. Fun fact, the humans have their own little bioluminescent glow, which is pretty neat. Everybody's got a little bit of the shining. Shout out Stephen King. India has
shining. Yes. Don't want to get sued.
Do you want to get a sued?
Yes, exactly.
India has entirely bioluminescent forests. They're not that way all the time. It depends on the monsoons, but they occur especially in an amazing part of the country called the Western Ghats, Ghats. So we know another fact, which is bioluminescence is real. Bacteria, fungi, algae, insects, and some aquatic animals all exhibit this. The process is well understood. It is a chemical reaction occurring within the organism wherein different chemical energy sources are converted into radiant energy, which produces light. And not all of it is in the spectrum of light that humans can see.
Well, yeah, maybe, any of us growing up would here in the United States probably have captured fireflies. That's probably the most common bioluminescent creature that we maybe have actually seen or gotten our hands on. But Ben, you pointed out off air that there are plenty of creatures that we know and see every day, or relatively frequently, I guess, depending on how outdoorsy you are, that have bioluminescence, but it won't show up because of that spectrum that you're talking about. So it requires a little help to be visible to the human eye.
Or it requires you to be a kitty cat. If you're a kitty cat, you can see them. And those spiders and other little insects probably look really tasty.
And with all these facts in mind, we have to ask ourselves, is it that crazy, the idea of a glow-in-the-dark spider? I mean, we know that there are spiders everywhere, Shout out to everybody who's had the dream where you bleed spiders. But
God. Oh, geez. That triggered me for some reason, man. Wow.
Yeah. There are different estimates that say India itself is home to maybe something like 59 or 60 completely different families of spiders. And we know there are unique species of spiders in India. Spoiler, by the way, there are unique species of spiders pretty much anywhere you go. There are a lot of spiders, but we don't have a ton of information. Considering it's such a successful form of life, we don't have a ton of information about spiders overall, and it's kind of tough to find them in these very densely biodiverse parts of the world. You're looking for arachnid needles in this huge gargantuan haystack of an ecosystem. But I don't know. It could be cool. We know that spiders can glow.
Yeah, we do. We do. Well, and there's one specific spider that was thought to be extinct for 150 years and then was discovered in this region we were describing, the Ghats region. After 150 years in 2018, it was rediscovered. It's this thing called the Chrysilla volupe, ChrysIllavolupe. And it's a beautiful, strange looking jumping spider that's got bands of bioluminescence and one right on its back. It's like blue and green colors. It's incredible looking.
Sorry, guys, my mind is going back to the fateful plane ride where I was able to enjoy the film Madam Web. I feel like that spider was bioluminescent. Y'all should check it out. It really is worth your time. It's terrible in a delightful way.
And we also know that I love the point we're making here. The idea that something can be called a cryptid because it is believed to be extinct only to be rediscovered, right? And when we say rediscovered, of course, there's the whole idea that discovery means Western science finds it and makes a special little Latin name for it, which is not the same as people not knowing it exists.
Because it also makes it sound like it was gone and all of a sudden it popped back into existence. But in order for it to exist now, as you're saying, Ben, it had to have existed the entire time. You just didn't know or couldn't see it.
Yeah, I mean, there is the outside non-zero possibility of convergent evolution.
Whoa.
Right?
It came back again?
It re-evolved due to environmental pressures. That is possible, but that's winning a series of weird lotteries.
Dodo just shows back up again that way in 2,000 years.
Oh boy. Yeah. That'd be a weird time. What kind of environment do you live in where the optimal end goal of evolution is to be a dodo?
Well, I think we might be in it.
Got big eggs.
The humans are too hungry.
Good for egg consumption.
On that bird. Yeah. I like a bird with some fat eggs,
Apparently big eggs are really difficult to cook though. I don't know, I've seen it in cooking shows where the ostrich egg is, if that's your grab on freaking Chopped or whatever, you're going to have a hard time.
You just scramble it, right?
Yeah, but maybe that's not maybe you're supposed to poach it in this particular challenge that we're talking about today, Matt. You don't always just get to scramble it, Matthew.
Dang.
Well, wish us luck as we continue our audition for Chopped, fellow conspiracy realist, and hold the phone. Hold the slow loris by its tail, folks.
No,
we have not gotten to every single thing here. Now, we did, I believe, make a very good case for the bioluminescent spider, as you pointed out, Matt. It is also completely possible that a series of arachnids could have been coated with bacteria or algae or some other bioluminescent material. That's all possible, so we can consider that one proven. We have another cryptid, a certain winged cat, that can be proven. You can solve that cryptozoological mystery yourself. Just look into winged cat and you think of flying squirrels. They're gliding squirrels, and that'll be the breadcrumbs, right? That'll lead you down that cryptozoological rabbit hole. What do you say, guys? Is that good enough of a tease?
I think so. Yeah.
I was going to say the word, but
a little homework.
It's okay. You'll find it.
You'll find it. It
starts with a C. How about that?
It starts with a C.
It's cat, isn't it?
It is neither cat nor Columbo.
Oh,
geez.
Good. That's good.
It is.
But wait a minute.
But
But one more thing. But one more thing, you guys. Man, a flying cat sounds dangerous. They're already. So can you imagine if, like, as cantankerous as cats can be, if they could just? It's like I don't like birds because we're afraid they're going to fly up in your face. If cats had that power, don't think I'd be a cat person. No, sir.
I think we would. This whole epoch we're in, where all the species are dying off again. I feel like it would have been over 1,000 years ago if cats had wings.
They'd kill us all.
Fly.
Maybe.
It wouldn't be their fault. They're just built for it,
They're murder machines.
I tried out. You know what I mean? It's like watch your babies around large predatory birds, but by the time you get full great ape size, you could probably get one. You could probably snatch one out of the air.
You could PvP a flying cat, Ben?
100%.
I think that's all right.
I mean, a flying house cat, yeah. A flying tiger, it's over.
Story.
Game over, man. No way.
There are certain house cats that would take me out.
Bro, they go right for the jugular. One little swipe, swoop in, you bleed out. Then they eat your eyes.
You guys both have good situational awareness. It might get one of your eyes, but you'll get it.
After you're dead. No, I'm saying it slices you first, waits for you to bleed out, then comes back for both eyes and all the other soft bits.
It's something about the way they latch on and then bolt out of there and then latch back on.
Yeah.
Nightmare fuel, guys.
And we hope you can trust us when we say that the mystery of the winged cat is not an evil mystery. You're going to be looking for phrases like Pauca Billy, Paucabillee. It is a Hindi term, roughly translating to winged cat. We can't wait to hear your guesses as you play along at home. We also can't wait to hear from you folks. Once again, thank you to Truth is Fiction YT on Reddit and YouTube for that awesome cryptid map of India. Some of these stories, some of these creatures or allegations thereof may well be episodes all their own. They have their own rich mythology, lots of parallels to known biology, and at the very least, they tell us a lot about the societies in which these stories propagate. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, be sure to tune in for our upcoming explorations of more strange and unusual phenomena. We're finally doing it. After all these years, an episode on crop circles. How did we not do that?
How did we not do that?
We did a video a long time ago. And we felt like, oh, we did that.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
That's what happened. And most importantly, folks, let us know what we should cover next. We try to be easy to find online.
Oh, yes, we do. You can find us online at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook, where you can find our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. On YouTube, where we have video content coming at you every week, as well as on X, FKA Twitter. You can also find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff Show on Instagram and TikTok.
We have a phone number. Call it 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, you'll hear a familiar voice. Then you'll have 3 minutes. Say whatever you'd like. Do tell us your name or whatever you'd like to be called. And if we can use your name and message on the air, if you've got more to say than can fit in that 3-minute voicemail, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the folks who hear you whisper in the dark. Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.